What's good, my pack rats? Welcome to my review of the Turbo Grafx 16 Mini. But before we get into that, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button for me. Also hit that notification bell so you know when I post new videos. I am being sincere when I say every single sub that I get means the world to me. I literally am ecstatic that I have somebody else that loves to share this content and share video games like I do. So without further ado, I thank you, and let's get into the Turbo Grafx Mini. So a little history on the Turbo Grafx if you guys are not familiar with it. So this console right here actually came out in Japan first. It was called the PC Engine and had a very different look to it. They were a little concerned on getting that console over here to the North American side, and so they waited a couple years to do it, and then they revamped the system to look like this. When that happened though, unfortunately the release window ended up being the same time as the Sega Genesis. So that 16-bit era kicked off and you already had the Turbo Grafx coming from essentially 1987, competing with that early 90s release window. So there is a lot of different reasons that people miss this. It initially sold pretty well, but unfortunately kind of waned in its life cycle, and they drastically had revisions through the thing. But because of those reasons, I missed this console and missed a lot of the games on it. So I am going to give you a quick spoiler. I think this is an awesome console for a couple reasons. Number one, a lot of people who didn't get a chance, this is a $100 solution for you to be able to check out the games library. It has games from the Turbo Grafx in North America, and then what's called the PC Engine, which is the same console for the Japanese releases, and you're able to play a lot of sought after games and actually pretty expensive relatively to getting your hands on the console and the games. So walk over kind of how this thing worked, and then we'll get into some gameplay. So the console itself took Hue cards, which were little cards that had the game data on it that popped in. The power here, as you turn it on, has a little notch right here that comes on and off that holds the card in place. On the back side, it actually comes with the original attachment that let you hook up the CD-ROM, which was an attachment for the Turbo Grafx later in its life cycle. So it has your HDMI port and your USB power, and this just pops back on to give it that original Turbo Grafx 16 look. It has two USBs, so you can play a couple of the two-player games available for it, and it just plugs in like any of the mini consoles. I wanted to go over the size comparison on this guy. So out of all the mini consoles, this is actually the largest one that's been produced. And I took some shots of all of these next to each other so you guys can check it out. So here is the NES Mini next to the Turbo Grafx 16 Mini. And then you've got what your Super Nintendo looks like next to it. Then we also have what it looks like next to the PlayStation 1 Mini. And capping it off, the Sega Genesis Mini next to this guy. And you can tell it's sometimes twice as large as some of those mini consoles. So I actually think that it's kind of cool because it feels like I have a true Turbo Grafx 16 machine or as close to it. And it really reflects what the change was from the Japanese PC Engine to the Turbo Grafx 16 when it came to the look and the production that they thought Americans would want. So there you go on the console. Can't have a console without a control pad. So these are the turbo pads, and again, it only comes with one, just so if you guys want to do a second player, you are going to have to pick up a second control pad, and I don't know where those are yet. So I'll search it when I'm done with the video. I'll put a link in the description on where you can purchase them. Hopefully you can. It actually resembles the Sega Master System and NES controllers with the 2-button layout and the D-pad, as well as your start and select, but it's actually called select and run on these pads. Difference on this guy though, turbo in the name and turbo is its game. One of the best parts of the turbo pad is your options to increase turbo on your 1 and 2 buttons. And this console is a shooter's dream. So the shoot 'em up genre was so prevalent, especially with its heavy roots in Japan. The Turbo Grafx 16 has some amazing shooters on it, and we'll get into that in the games, but you'll know that this turbo button is going to be your best friend on some of those shooters. So we've got the king of the minis with a large console. We've got a cool turbo pad with turbo buttons, but what is a console or a system without games? And the Turbo Grafx 16 comes with these guys right here. So you'll notice the Turbo Grafx 16 games, which were the North American releases, and then it also has the PC Engine releases, which gives you some really sought after games. So the first thing that stands out to me is how awesome this menu system is. It starts out and you get into the menu system of the Turbo Grafx 16. It starts out with some fun music. You're able to scroll through your games easily. Coolest part, once you pick your game, it turns into a hue card or a CD-ROM, and it either gets inserted with sound effects or you have the spin-up sound of your drive starting, which I think are some really cool nods to the Turbo Grafx and the attachments that were with it. Once you're on that menu system, you can switch over to the PC Engine games, which actually changes the music and the backdrop of what you're reviewing and searching for. So this gets you into all of your Japanese PC Engine titles. Unfortunately, a lot of these titles are in Japanese, so if you're looking to play an RPG or something and you don't know Japanese, just know you are gonna struggle a little bit, but there's definitely enough within this library for you to be entertained with or without the Japanese, especially when you get into some of the games. I would say most of them, maybe about 80%, don't require the need for you to know how to read Japanese. You can actually get through the menu system pretty easily and start playing right away. So we're gonna go through some of the ones that kind of caught my eye and the ones that I've enjoyed trying out on the system, as well as some epic PC Engine games that I think are worth a lot of people's times too. So here we go. Chu Man Fu. This is actually a fun game puzzler where you take different colored balls and get them to their appropriate colored base. Meanwhile, you have to dodge various enemies. You can take them out with the ball. You can break through borders that line the maze that you have to get the balls around. And it ended up being kind of a fun little kitschy game that I've enjoyed on the Turbo Grafx 16. Then we've got some strange ones like JJ and Jeff. This is a side-scrolling platformer, and it has some very interesting physics to it, as you pretty much have this weird ice physics where you slide on the ground. Now it's not ice, but it feels very much so as you're moving the characters around. I'm still trying to understand the basics of the game, but it looks like you can spray your enemies or bugs as well as jump over things. Now, I'm just gonna let you know, if you hit a rock, you pretty much die really quick. So rocks are the villains in this game so far, but just another unique one on the Turbo Grafx. Then you have one of your closest Zelda clones on the Turbo Grafx, and that's Neotopia, and it feels very much like Link to the Past. So if you guys are looking for a Zelda feeling game, which almost exactly, that has kind of its own storyline and lore, then Neotopia can give you hours of fun on the Turbo Grafx 16 Mini. Another one is Ninja Spirit. This is a cool platformer where you have various abilities, and your job is to basically protect yourself from the onslaught of enemies that come left, right, up, and down all over the screen. Projectiles fly at you at the same time as you're trying to defend yourself, but you have some cool abilities that give you some decent defense, as well as an ability that gives you kind of a shadow of yourself that mimics all of your same moves. But I found myself playing this one for quite a while. The last one on the Turbo Grafx 16 would be Lords of Thunder. And man, from the get-go, it has this epic intro, awesome sound. You choose your characters based on the level that you're going to be competing in. So fire, water, wind. You select your armor and then you get into it, and then it rocks with some killer soundtracks as you're shooting the crap out of guys. I again will have to say, a lot of these shooters are unforgiving. This is, even though this is a very cool console, Every single game on here is very difficult, and many of the shooters require you to start over from the beginning, so you'll have to have a lot of patience. But once you understand the games, you end up having a blast playing them. So once you switch over to the PC Engine, you now have a new set of games that you can play with. And I found some fun ones on this too. So first you have Kung Fu, where you basically are a guy that takes up the entire screen, looks like Bruce Lee, and his job is to just punch and kick his way through an onslaught of enemies. I don't know why, but it has kind of like some intrigue on the graphic design of it, and I found it to be pretty fun once you start, but I did die from a rock to the temple, so the game itself does have its flaws. Just saying. You got some classics on there like Galaga and Fantasy Zone. PC Genjin, which is, I believe, the first Bonks, but it's the PC Engine version. You can still play it, no problem. Then you've got some awesome games. So back to shooters, Super Darius, where you are a ship taking out creepy fish things, fish monsters. And they've had a lot of Darius games, but Super Darius is a blast to play. And you'll notice again, the music, the graphics, they're all really fantastic to be able to play. Next would be Super Star Soldier. This is another amazing shooter that I would be none the wiser that existed previously on these things. And this is absolute awesome shooter that I've enjoyed tremendously. Arguably, one of the reasons why people are jumping on this Turbo Grafx 16 is because it includes in the PC Engine games Castlevania Rondo of Blood. And this is a game that is highly sought after, available on the Turbo Grafx CD. So to be able to get that on the PC Engine, it's $100 for this console. You get all of these fantastic games. You get to dive into the library, and to have Castlevania Rondo of Blood be one of those is awesome. It is a cool take on Castlevania. I am already getting my butt kicked on it, but I am enjoying it tremendously. And then I have another one that has already become one of my favorite shooters on the Turbo Grafx, and that is, and I apologize because I'm going to butcher this, but it is Genja Fuki Detsetsu Sapphire. You get to choose between 4 different characters, and it is just a blast. The music is awesome. It's a killer shoot 'em up. I absolutely love the aesthetic. I love the graphics. I love the power-ups. It is a very, very cool shooter, and I think it is worth your time if you're gonna pick this guy up. So to recap, the Turbo Grafx 16 is an epic console. If you've never played a Turbo Grafx before, this gives you an opportunity to dive into the library. If you're a shooter fan, 50% of the games are some epic side-scrolling and top-down shoot-em-ups that you are gonna have a blast with. And if you want to get into some unique games like Bonks, Adventure, or an opportunity for you to be able to play Castlevania Rondo of Blood, all right, friends, that is it. That is the Turbo Grafx 16. I absolutely think this is a fantastic console. It is worth it alone for Castlevania Rondo of Blood. It's worth it alone to get into all of the shooters that the Turbo Grafx and the PC Engine had available for it. And then if you just want to dive into some of the unique library, like Newtopia or Bonks or Airzonk, all of these I think are worth being able to pick this guy up, and only for $100, one of the best mini consoles, if not the best one to come out so far, in my humble opinion. Guys, if you like what I got going on, you like my silly content, hit the subscribe button. Again, I appreciate, and it means the world to me, for every single one of you that sub. And until we see each other again, eat your cornflakes and make sure that you're climbing a mountain. What?